Welcome to the Startup Competitors Podcast, where we talk with early-stage entrepreneurs to understand what information they use to inform product roadmap, strategy, and market differentiation.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Kelly. Today we have Ray Biederman, who's the COO at Proteus.
Hey.
Ray, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Tell us a little bit about Proteus and what you guys do.
Sure. So I guess in order to get into what Proteus is, probably have to explain a little bit about myself and my team. So we are 4 attorneys who were at a really large law firm here in Indianapolis. We decided through kind of the work that we've done in corporate litigation that we saw a need in the market for a company that purely handles e-discovery for both corporations, large and small, and for overflow work for law firms. There are plenty of law firms in this market that are really sophisticated at litigation and just don't understand as much when it comes to electronic data. So we wanted to be able to provide kind of a niche service. So people knew us from being litigators in town, and then they also know us as technologists of sorts. I'm probably more on the technology side than some of my partners, but we all know our way around. And I am talking about John Mattingly. I'm kidding. John's great. So about three and some change years ago, we launched Proteus Discovery Group and a companion law firm called Mattingly, Burke, Cohen, and Biederman. And so it started out with just the 4 of us, and we have grown into 12 full-time employees between the 2 companies. And then we hire on a project basis contract reviewers. So, at any given time, like now, for instance, we have about 40 contract reviewers working with us, as many hours as they choose to work.
And those contract reviewers are all in Proteus Discovery, correct?
That's correct.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about it. So there is a technology component to Proteus Discovery. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it's doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in connection with what we're doing on the technology side in Proteus, so there are all these different pieces of existing software. One is called Relativity, and one's called Viewpoint, and there are a whole host of other ones. But those are kind of the two main pieces of software that get used in the marketplace. And so we notice when we work with our clients, they're involved in more than one piece of litigation at any given time. And in order to get an idea of where they stand on each piece of litigation from a document review standpoint, they have to log in to each one of these pieces of software, log into each matter that they have, and run a couple of reports. And so we are continuing to develop, and we sort of have a 1.0 out right now of a dashboard that, regardless of what project you have, you can log into this dashboard and see at a glance all of the reports that you would need to report to, any of the corporate executives or anyone else on the legal team.
You've already given a little bit about kind of where you guys are on the journey. Talk a little bit about, because this is, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's a mix of technology and services, right? When somebody is contracting with Proteus, they're bringing you in both for that dashboarding piece of it, as well as the reviewers who are coming on to do the document review, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we have the consulting portion where we look at current processes, current document collections that are being done. So for instance, if heaven forbid Developer Town were to ever get sued, not going to happen, but if it ever did, we would come in and we would talk to people internally and figure out who has the relevant data for that particular lawsuit. Okay. So we would collect their email from the email server or whatever cloud-based provider they use. We collect whatever documents are any network shares, and we look at people's individual computers and figure out what documents, if any, are there that need to be collected. And then all of that gets put through a processing tool which is that relativity viewpoint that I was talking about. And then we, Proteus, bring in document reviewers to get through all of those documents and find what's relevant to the lawsuit, what's not relevant, and then what can be withheld based on any type of privilege that could be associated with a document or set of documents.
Interesting. How do you think about growth? Are you thinking about growing it in the way that a technology company would think about growing, or are you thinking about growing it as a consulting company thinks about growing? Or do you think about growing it only in the context of how it helps MBCB, for those listening, the real law firm, right? Like how it helps that grow?
Yep.
Like, how do you guys think of, for this company and what you're trying to do, like what does the next 5 to 10 years look like? And what's a real success story for you look like?
Yeah, so you caught us at a really interesting time kind of in our growth. So when we launched Proteus, we had intended for it to feed the law firm and the law firm to feed it, and it kind of be a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
But as things have continued to grow, the software component of things is starting to kind of have a mind of its own. And so we're trying to figure out, what that looks like. There are a lot of competitors in our space, a lot of them. And the software piece really takes some of that out, as far as we can sell this software to our competitors.
Right.
And it doesn't give us, competition on the document review side. That's still its own fight.
Yep.
But it helps us win business from some of these bigger players that we otherwise wouldn't have exposure to. So to answer your question, we're looking at growth in a couple of different ways. One, we want more clients with repeat business. On the litigation side, on the law firm side of things.
Sounds so horrible, by the way.
Right.
Clients with repeat business.
Yeah, I know. It sounds terrible for the clients. Right. Absolutely, I agree. But when you're a litigator, you get one matter, and then you don't talk to the person for 2 years, and then you get another matter. And so you have to have a very wide but shallow bench of clients, right? Whereas on the Proteus side, our goal is to develop big relationships with a smaller number of clients. So we can really offer services that are very competitive in the price space, because we'll come in and we know where your data's at because we've been in there already. And we have data hosted here and we have data hosted there, and we can leverage kind of our past learning to increase value to our clients. And so that's been an interesting transition, kind of the first 3 years of us with Proteus and MBCB, because at first we were like, we need as many clients as possible. And then on the Proteus side, we kind of have come to realize that, a smaller client list is actually a good thing for that type of a service. And then on the software piece of things, we're still trying to figure that one out.
Okay. Well, let's pivot into going deeper on that competition. So when you think of competition, talk about, because I know there's a couple of different dynamics there at play, right? Like, how do you guys think of competition for Proteus? Sure.
So there are companies that offer, let's talk about relativity for a moment. So relativity is a piece of software that's used by 75% of either law firms or third-party resellers. And so these third-party resellers will say, hey, we offer relativity. And that's enticing to law firms, and it's enticing to clients because they're familiar with the name. They don't have to learn something new. They can just log in, whatever vendor they choose to use for a particular project. And so some of those companies that offer relativity hosting, they also have a separate document review arm. And so they try to cover the entire gamut of e-discovery services. And so there's some competition there between us and these vendors that offer both the hosting and the document review. And then there are other shops like ours that offer document review. And so they're another form of competitor. And then, law firms themselves, they have a fleet of attorneys that they want to get into projects to do document review as well. And so that's an interesting dynamic because most of our clients are law firms. And we have a great relationship with them, but it's figuring out kind of where our road ends and their road begins, because reviewing documents in order to figure out relevance is kind of a low-hanging fruit that you can give to a company like ours, and that saves financial resources for clients so they can spend the money on the substance of the litigation, which is really what's important. Getting things to briefs, getting things to motion practice, getting things to trial. And so we work, closely with law firms in order to sell that service to end clients at a reasonable price. But at the same time, they do have an interest, and traditionally they've done the review themselves. And so getting past that sort of beginning dynamic is an important aspect of our sales process.
Yeah. So when you go to sell Proteus, what are you typically selling? Like, how does that conversation start? Is it more like, I'm not sure what I'm selling until I've asked them a bunch of questions. Then when I understand where they're at, I'm going to now figure out, am I selling just software? Am I selling software and services? Am I selling, how do you think when you approach a prospect, how are you thinking about framing that relationship to figure out what it is you're offering them?
Yeah. So this comes in a couple different flavors. And I think the first approach you outlined, where we have to ask a bunch of questions to figure out where they're at kind of on a continuum, that is 75% of our sales comes from that.
Okay.
People will reach out and they'll say, hey, we need e-discovery services.
And do they know what they mean when they're asking for that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because your face kind of implied that they did not know what they needed. Okay.
Yeah. Most of the time, the beginning part of the call is figuring out what they mean by e-discovery services. Okay. And that's just the nature of the law has changed very quickly in this area, and us as lawyers and the law generally does not change quickly. And so learning these new terms and people understanding exactly what they need, part of our sales process is education, which is why most of our marketing effort has actually gone towards attorney education. We figure if we can be out in the space telling people what they may need, that will actually help them make a better ask of us or whatever vendor they're going to. And when they can make a better ask, then we can compete better.
Right. All right. So for the 25% where it's not education and asking a bunch of questions, what are you leading with? What is the thing that you're selling?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that we're selling is time. Okay. Whether it's the four of us, our time in working through the complex e-discovery issues, figuring out what the scope of collection is, figuring out what they need to do to be in line with a court order. We all have AmLaw 100. That's like a list of the 100 biggest law firms.
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course, be familiar with that.
Yeah, naturally. And so we all have AmLaw 100 experience, 10, 15 years of it. And so we understand a lot of these issues from the legal side, which helps us translate, for lack of a better term, between technology world and legal world. So we can act as kind of a bridge between the two so the people can understand each other. Because I don't know if you know this, but you technologists have a whole language that no one else understands.
Everything we say is crystal clear from the minute we say it.
Right. The same with attorneys. Yeah. Everything we say, very crystal clear. Yep. And so that's a big component of what we sell is that linkage between technology and the law. The other component of what we sell is the doc review. And so sometimes we'll lead with that if we know that there are a lot of documents sitting out there that need to be reviewed. We'll lead with, here's our doc review process. Here are the things that make us different than your typical document review company, including our experience. And then here's the price savings between having a law firm, a traditional law firm review all of this stuff, as opposed to having us run some of our processes and having some of our people review things preliminarily and then have it go to the law firm.
Does Proteus have to be partnered with a law firm, or could I start up a competitor in the legal discovery space today, me not being a lawyer? Is there just a pure play technology play there, or?
So that's complicated.
Okay.
For a whole host of reasons. So if you just wanted to sell software, yeah, that's fine. You could start it up tomorrow and we'd wish you the best.
And this would be a platform that I would then be licensing to people like Proteus and other law firms, right? Where then it would be a platform that they could use to run their process.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
You could totally do that.
And those exist, right?
And those exist. Okay. There's a growing number of them. We use a lot of them. When we launched Proteus, we made the decision that we were going to be software agnostic. So we could plug into any one of these pieces of software.
So any code you're writing is adding value on top of whatever those packages are.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Got it.
But the review portion of things is where it gets a little more hairy. There are certain jurisdictions across the United States that require people to be licensed attorneys to do the actual review. But what this also means, and this is a little bit of extrapolating, reading between the lines, what it also means is that the ownership of that company needs to be by attorneys as well, under ethical rules. And so kind of managing some of those things might be a little complex for someone that just wanted to get into this space that wasn't already an attorney.
In the review process, how much is like artificial intelligence or different sets of rules? How much does that come into play, or is it still a bunch of humans looking through every document and making a internal judgment call about whether or not this is relevant?
Yeah, so machine learning is a larger and larger part of what we're doing. Actually, it's funny that this brings it up, but the name Proteus is based on a Kurt Vonnegut book, Player Piano.
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So in Player Piano, Paul Proteus is the protagonist, and try to say that 3 times fast. But Paul, he manages this machine-based company, and more people their jobs are being eliminated, and they have to move to the other side of the river, and they live in this whole other world that isn't as technologically based, and people are very poor and starving. But he's an engineer, so he's, doing all right. And so he leads this shop, and then he gets asked to move to the biggest shop in the United States. And this is fully autonomized, right? And he has to make this decision. Does he want to lead this shop, or does he want to lead a revolt against using all of this technology? And so we're not leading any revolt
yet.
but in the law, this is starting to happen with regard to some of this doc review. The machine learning is getting better and better and more perceptive at some of the nuances in documents. And so what we do is we work with the machine to help us prioritize review. But we still have human eyes on the documents, because there are a decent amount of nuances still that computers just can't get yet. And then some of the privilege calls that need to be made, and the narratives that need to be drafted for these. And then even just finding a document that someone on the litigation team needs to get their eyes on. Computers can't really do that yet.
The prioritization process?
So there's prioritization, but then there's, if there's something that, if someone were to sue Mike Kelly, and in their documents it says, Mike Kelly.
I don't like your examples.
Sorry.
Anymore. All right, keep going.
But it says, there's something's wrong with Mike Kelly, right? You're going to want to see that right away.
Yes.
And so, you can run a couple searches to try to find that, but the computer's not necessarily going to understand the impact of that document on the larger scale of the litigation. And so human review is an important element still.
Okay. All right. So let's back up, because you kind of said that this was a topic that you guys were diving into right now in terms of what's the relationship going to be going forward and what's the larger view of Proteus going forward. So when you think about what software you guys should be investing in on the Proteus side, whether it's more dashboards or maybe your own take it, machine learning, or whatever the case may be, how do you think about that? So what are some of the inputs for you to determine where you guys invest in terms of the growth of Proteus?
Yeah, so we talk a lot to our clients about what their needs are, and specifically we look at their usage patterns of this software. Whatever piece of software it is, we look at their usage patterns, and we notice that there are a couple of people who never log in. And that's fine. They just get emails with updates of what's going on. They never really have to log in. And then there are other people that just log in to run one report every day, right? Or they ask us to run one report every day of how many documents are responsive versus how many documents are not responsive, versus how many documents are privileged and how long it's taken, right? Those are all different reports you can run. So what we've decided is kind of the next thing is, why don't we just create a dashboard where someone can log in and see every project they have, get those 3 or 4 pieces of information that they care about, and just see them there, log in, and get them used to doing that. And then it's only one place for all of their projects that they have. Instead of having, vendor X run 5 reports and vendor Y run 5 reports and have, Proteus run 3 reports. And that's all stuff that's time consuming. And granted, you can, bill for it, but it takes away from the core of what we're trying to do.
And it's also a nice brand to leave behind for you, even if they're not actively engaged with you on a document review process. They're still leveraging that dashboard for their daily reporting.
Exactly.
Across all of their projects.
Across all of their projects, no matter who the vendor is.
Right. So when I hear dashboard, that doesn't sound incredibly difficult, but I also don't know the systems that you're integrating with, so maybe it is. How long do you think that takes? Is that a year or 2 years before you have that where you want that to be, or
where I want it to be?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that'll never be done, right? Isn't that part of the problem? With a lot of this,
you're not supposed to know that it's never going to be done. That's our secret on our side,
right? Exactly. Yeah. So relativity is SQL based, so it's not all that crazy difficult. There are certain considerations on a per project basis that have to be ironed out, because there's a lot of customization that occurs with each vendor and with each project. So normalizing some of that is probably a bigger challenge.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what our key to success is going to be is coming up with standard procedures that when a project gets loaded, it's done this way. Or if there's an exception to that, we know about it right away, so we can build or tweak what we have to on our side. That's been probably the biggest challenge in building this so far.
Interesting. So when I play that out, that tells me that you could potentially have a custom dashboard for each of your larger clients, right? And that thus your theory of fewer clients, bigger accounts.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely part of it. And we feel like our plan to dominate the world of e-discovery is we get to where we need to get to with some larger players, and most marketing in the legal world, at least, is word of mouth. I mean, that's in probably anywhere. Word of mouth is probably the best form of marketing. For some of us on the legal side, it's kind of the only form of marketing. And so us having really good relationships with a couple of people helps kind of the larger scale sell. The other challenge is, while relativity is SQL based, there are a lot of other, NoSQL based or other proprietary sorts of database structures that we have to integrate into this dashboard. So it's not only useful for relativity.
Yeah, got it. Perfect. All right, man. What are you excited about right now personally that you're learning more of, that you're investing some time into?
Sure. Well, this is really kind of off the beaten path, but I play in a rock band, and we released an album. It's on Bandcamp. I know I'm giving a shameless plug.
No, you got to do it now.
So
you can't veer away from this.
Right. The band is called Sidewalk Souls, and we're on Bandcamp. It's either sidewalksouls.bandcamp.com or bandcamp.sidewalksouls.com. One of the two. Oh, he's looking it up right now. And we actually played a show at the White Rabbit over the weekend. It was very cool. And so getting into some of that is a good stress relief. I have my bachelor's degree in music from Butler, but it's all classical music. So playing in a rock band's like a really fun new thing to do. Interesting.
All right. It is sidewalksouls.bandcamp.com. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. And it doesn't look like you're singing.
No, I play violin in it, but rock violin is totally different.
I'll take your word for it. Well, I will listen to it after this.
Awesome.
So we'll see if it's totally different. And that would beg different to what? All right. If people want to learn more about Proteus, where can they find you guys? And if they want to learn more about you personally, where can they connect with you on social media?
Sure. So I'm on Facebook, Ray Biederman. Our company is go-proteus.com, or you could check out our law firm, mbcblaw.com. Either of those places, you could learn a lot about kind of the four of us, our starting, and the different services we offer in the e-discovery space.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
If you're thinking of launching a SaaS product, Startup Competitors can provide data on your closest competitors, survey potential users, or provide other product validation services. Learn more at startupcompetitors.com.